Okay, so I got a hot dog, sausage, half a bag of pretty large popcorn, a bag of peanuts, 5 Budweiser Zeros, 3 fish tacos, 1 pound of wings. That, and I think that was the entire list, guys, but that, I have to admit, I shamefully consumed at the Blue Jay game last night, less than 12 hours ago.
Damn. Yeah, I thought you were going to do a joke there and be like, who am I? And I'd be like, I was going to be like obese.
Yeah. Well, sadly, I just realized I forgot 3 Coronas.
Whoa.
That went with dinner after the game. Now, I don't know if you caught do you guys know what Bud Zero is?
I can imagine what Bud Zero is. The shittier version of Bud Light.
It's Bud Zero, like there's no alcohol. So I have.
I no longer want
Coronas.
I have another word to describe that, which I won't use on this family-friendly podcast.
Okay. Well, and let me just say the 3 Coronas were Corona. They're called Sun Brews, which are non-alcoholic Coronas. So the theme there, well, there's a few themes, I guess, in that list. Number 1, yeah, that's a pretty wow. And it's going to make what I'm talking about in a sec very silly almost, but I'm on a diet.
Oh my God.
For 75 days, I'm not allowed to drink alcohol. I am not allowed to eat desserts like cookies, candy, cake, chocolate, anything like that. I have to work out for 45 minutes a day and I have to drink a gallon of water. So yes, I'm on day 59 as
Clark,
we speak.
I think you misunderstood the diet. It doesn't mean eat everything but those things.
So I've added that feature or that parameter for when I need to do so. It's okay.
How's that diet working? How many pounds have you gained?
Well, you see, unfortunately my scale was broken when I started it. So and that wasn't from me, but it just stopped working. It's an electronic scale. So I don't have a benchmark, to be honest, but I feel a lot better. And again, that's like I've done that once in the whole time. Like this is a bit of a one-off, but yeah. So I really just went to the game last night with the intent to eat pretty much anything I wanted, except alcohol. And that's what I did, guys, last night. And the Blue Jays won. Blue Jays won 2-0. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who's been on a terrible trajectory this year, or slump, or whatever you want to call it, not living up to the heightened expectations people have for him. He hit the home run that was responsible for the 2-0 victory, which was cool. Good for Vladimir.
Nice.
So it's been a while, guys, but welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for having us.
I guess there's a lot of stuff we could talk about other than my list of food here, but you're both, like, what's happening in Japan these days? Is this coronavirus even something people talk about anymore?
Still talked about in some circles, I guess. There have been, I think, recently a tiny spike of cases in certain areas, and in Japan, mask wearing is definitely still a thing.
Right.
No longer required, but people love wearing their masks.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's part of the culture there, right, anyway?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely inside of trains and a few other specific types of environments. They're very, very prevalent. In some other internal environments, maybe not as much. But I took my kids recently to the doctor's clinic just to get a certain prescription that both of them need to have just in case of anything. And it was a zoo. It was an absolute zoo inside the clinic. We don't have as high a prevalence of corona, but there's definitely a lot of flus and chest-related pneumonia type illnesses that are pretty prevalent. Summer colds are always a little bit prevalent here, just because of the humidity. It seems like those kind of things stick to people. But
Yeah.
there's definitely a lot of that happening right now. And when you ask what's going on in Japan, well, I mean, summer. We had a very short rainy season compared to what I would say is usual. I don't know if you agree, Sileem, but that's at least my observation. And
Yep.
the heat is already starting to kick in. We're already going into the mid 30s, mid 80s or upper 80s in Fahrenheit, sometimes even hitting about 90 in Fahrenheit in the last couple of days. So the forecast for a fairly hot summer is not something people are looking forward to, for sure. But I will say, as much as it is humid here and it's the typical Japan humidity, it's not as bad because the wet season wasn't so intense.
Yeah, I remember that season, as you said, the rainy season is usually most of June into July, or is it usually wrapped up by end of June?
Could go into July a little bit, but typically tends to wrap up around the end of July, and starts kind of late May-ish.
All right. Yeah, but July certainly the heat. Yeah, I remember the mid 30s, even up close to 40. I remember I'd go to work. I just put I used to get my shirts folded from the cleaner, and then I would just throw that into my bag and go down on the subway in a t-shirt, and then I would change into, like Superman, I would change into the shirt in the bathroom down in the concourse there before I went up. And I was the only one. I always felt like I was underdressed on the train because every other person had the shirt and usually a tie and the typical Navy suit. And I just felt like this bum, but I would just arrive soaked, so why bother?
Yeah, that makes sense. I always look like a bum when I'm going to the office.
So there's no telling the difference, right?
There's no telling the difference, yeah.
Yes, I recall you were a more casual dresser.
Right. And I think we talked about this on one of our previous episodes as well, how I'm I'm not a fan of the suit and tie look.
Yeah, especially with the pandemic, that really just became, for a lot of us here, you just wear whatever you want, I guess, which actually is another topic that we'll talk about another time. But, well, I guess if I'm to highlight anything, and I'm interested to hear if it's made it back to your area of the world, we're dealing with these wildfires that have affected, we've actually had some air quality alerts where kids aren't supposed to play outside. Older people should stay inside.
All the way to the States, right? Because it was a big deal in the States as well.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw that Toronto had the worst air quality index a couple days ago. And then I think it was, surprisingly, I think Dubai was number 2. And then Chicago was the 3rd. And they said Chicago, because of the smoke from on like Canada, like Quebec, Ontario, drifting down into Chicago. So, and even New York, probably you might have heard, had some air quality issues due to the smoke up here.
Yeah. I heard about that.
Yeah, I got the photos from friends in the tri-state area looking like Blade Runner in the sky.
Yeah. So we've had my kids' baseball games have been canceled, and it's affected mostly kids' sports, really. And then you can smell it. Like if you go outside, it smells like a fire burning somewhere in the distance. And then it was actually not bad. I didn't mind it. I almost liked the smell a little bit. But then a couple of days ago, it had more of a chemical-ish smell to it. Like it was maybe a building that was on fire as opposed to a campfire. So we are the bane of some of our neighbors to the south. With regard to the smoke situation, but you got to blame Quebec for most of it, which we're apt to do here.
If you're the bane, it's just temporary, anyways. They're just annoyed that they have to remember that you're the neighbors, and oh, that's right, Canada's there.
Yes, we're not a neighboring state; we're a neighboring country. Let's get into this. The other day, I was just. I was in a creative mood, and sometimes creative at the time doesn't translate into our episodes, but I just got to thinking about best friends, that whole title of a best friend. And, it got me thinking, like, where did this come from? I mean, I guess it comes from childhood. That first time I heard that term was as a kid. Oh, hey, you're my best friend, or am I your best friend? And I just got to thinking, like, I have at least one person I would refer to as my best friend, but I would say I have several best friends. And I was just two things. One, does everybody have a best friend, or most people have a best friend? Or is it unusual for me to have a best friend and most people don't? And they just have, friends, but not best friends. So a few things there was going through my head. What do you guys think of this whole best friend thing?
I was just wondering, actually, I mean, when you said that, should best friend be limited to one? Can you have multiple best friends? Is it possible to have multiple bests when it's one category?
Well, that's why I said, in my note, I mentioned, you've heard the term, well, you're one of my best friends, or that guy or that girl is one of my best friends. So it's a question, I guess, is what doesn't best mean the best?
Right, yeah. I think people want to feel special, right? And amongst friends, and there are differences, right, between friends. Some friends are closer than others, and some friends are the closest friends that you have, the people that you hang out the most with, or like better than most of the others on average. So those become your best friends, right? And people, I guess, they just like that word, right? When you're someone's best friend, it's like emotionally, there's something to it, right? Because you are saying that this person is particularly special, and people want to feel special. So I get the reasoning behind best friends, or choosing the word best friend. I try to avoid the word and use close friends. So I would say one of my closest friends.
So one thing that came to mind as we were talking was just that it looks like for the recipient of that title, that's where you were focusing, that the people who could be labeled as the best friend are the ones that kind of need this label or enjoy this label, versus the person who assigns the best friend label. Do they need to have that for whatever reason? So you went it was more about the person who's being considered as the best friend.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I did go that route. Because I was just thinking, sort of, maybe because I don't call people, and I guess we don't, as you grow up, right? As you grow older, you're not going around, telling people, you're my best friend and you're my best friend. Like you're mentioning, it's more something that you do more often when you're a kid and when you're growing up. So I was thinking more being on the receiving end. If someone said, "Oh, Sileem, you're my best friend," I'm like, okay, cool. That's awesome. Like, that's great. Thank you. You're one of my closest friends too.
Justin, what's your take on this?
I guess maybe taking it one step further, in some of the communities that I grew up around and friends that I was with coming up, and even now as an adult, what would oftentimes be thrown around when you've kind of reached this, I don't know, for lack of a better term, status of a place in a person's life, is it's almost like you're familiar. You're almost family, right? So a lot of times it would be like Theo or Uncle Justin. So like my close friend, or my quote unquote best friend, would refer to me, to their children, as Uncle Justin, as if I am part of the family. So in some ways, that kind of best friend status, that place in a person's life, or their place in your life, where they're so close, they're basically like being a family member, would sometimes be replaced with the term uncle instead of calling me best friend, as a reference point. The flip side of that, though, is there are some communities that throw around uncle and auntie like it's nothing, like it is just any person, anybody who's just kind of around all the time is just called uncle and auntie, but they're not necessarily that close. They're not necessarily as close as maybe how we're framing this best friend type of topic. I'm more of the less is more type. Maybe this is alluding a bit to the comment that was attached to the topic about acquaintances and friends and labeling and things like that. I have acquaintances, and there's people that I know professionally and personally that I would say are acquaintances, and they're people that I could probably call upon as a broader network to support me or people in my own immediate circle. But beyond that, good friends or close friends, people that I respect and that also have similar outlook in terms of how they view their families and how they view, their personal time and their life in general. There's maybe a handful of people like that I would say are good friends or best friends, as we're pluralizing it here. I'm not someone who's been too keen to label in that way.
Well, when you're saying it, I just thought there's this hierarchy, categorization of friends that we almost do or have, right? Like, as you said, there's one of my closest friends, that person's my best friend. That's a person I consider, as you said, a close acquaintance. So you've got all these different labels almost for each of the categories: colleague, peer. Sometimes you might hear peer. My peer. That's more of a work term, but I guess one thing I really want to get to the heart of in this, I think, the part that jumps out for me. Do you guys have someone in your friends list that you would say without even hesitating, oh yeah, that guy's my best, or that girl's my best friend?
Well, maybe there's one person that I am especially close to amongst all the close friends. And I do have many close friends. And for me, what qualifies as a close friend, because I do have that, I know where I draw the line in terms of close friends and where everyone else kind of sits. And for me, close friend is someone that I can send something. I can send something to that person that is just totally frivolous. That someone else would absolutely not care about, and they would actually sort of care about whatever I sent, even though if it's something trivial.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So, or maybe they get it.
Yeah.
Like versus other friends that just would never get it. Like,
right. Yeah.
Hey, like you just send it and they can immediately look at it and go, "Oh, that's fucking hilarious." But for the rest of your friends, they would just be like, I don't know.
Or just like, just something that you did, for instance. Like I got a new car recently, and I might tell a few people, right? Hey, I got a new car. And I typically wouldn't be telling everyone that, for instance.
I didn't know you had a new car, Sileem.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there needs to be some.
Unfortunately,
you know?
Unfortunately, Sileem, the cat is out of the bag, and you've now told the entire internet.
Well, yeah, the cat is out of the bag, and I have to.
If you know that Sileem bought a new car, you are considered one of his best friends.
But I mean, you're also not telling all of your close friends that, right? So there's some context to it, obviously. But I wouldn't, I wouldn't just randomly go to a certain friend, even if we're having a conversation, right? Like in the middle of a conversation, just sort of regular friend, I probably wouldn't bring that up necessarily.
So what about you, Justin? Do you have someone you could just name right now as your best friend?
Yeah, I would say there's somebody I could say is like family, and that I could rely upon them in anything through thick and thin. One person here and one person in the US that I'm very close with. Yeah. And
these are people that you've known for a really long time, or?
Yeah. I mean, and in both cases, I think kind of going back to the original part of this discussion about labeling and about this hierarchy, that's really to the outside, like to the individual, to the person. It's already understood, kind of alluding to what Sileem was mentioning in terms of sharing a certain joke or sharing a certain common language. It's like these people in my life and I have this understanding. We don't even need to say that to each other. We understand what our place is in each other's lives because there's a history shared, and there's definitely an understanding as to at what level we would support one another in a time of need, and beyond that, support each other, day to day, whenever we can.
I would say, I mean, I certainly have a person I would immediately think of as a best friend. He's been my best friend since I was a kid. And so he's had the best friend label for a long time. And that's my friend Mike. He's been on the podcast a couple times. But him and I grew up from, I guess, when I was 13, we met. We lived 100 feet from each other. And then once we moved out of our houses with our parents, he actually lives now about 100 feet from where I live now, which I think is kind of bizarre, but cool.
That's incredible.
The reason I was thinking about this was because it was Mike who brought this topic up, and him and his dad were having a conversation, and he asked his dad, "Do you have a best friend?" And there was like a long silence, apparently, of thinking about that. Now his dad's older. I mean, I think he's early 80s now, and apparently it was a little bit emotional about it. Like, I think he just sort of sat there and he said, "No, I don't." And it was kind of got me thinking, like, whoa, I'm so lucky to have a best friend like that I can call my best friend, that I trust, that I can tell him anything and know it'll be kept confidential. Mm-hmm. And so that got me reflecting, like, when I'm 80 and I'm looking around, what will be there? And we don't know what his story was. Maybe he had a best friend that passed away. We didn't get that information, or he just never cultivated a best friend. And so that got me thinking. It's a little somber sounding, but that's where it came from.
I would really like to hear a female perspective on this too at some point. Maybe this is something for a later episode that could be brought
Let's get
in.
our producer to patch in, find a random person to join us here.
Well, I mean, there's a reason I say that, because there's a lot of women that I know that a lot of their female friends, they're friends, but it's at a surface level. And that a lot of times there's not a true best friend that hasn't really snaked them in some way, shape, or form, because the female dynamic around friendship, sometimes, at least what's been expressed to me, can be a bit rougher.
I've heard that too. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I have heard that a lot of women prefer almost to have male friends because their female friends they just seem to be, it's different. It's not the same. Guys sort of look at friendships in a different way.
I think there's a weird competition element.
Yes. Yeah.
As well.
That's the word I was thinking of too.
Yeah, with women. From what I hear, I
think it would be great to have the perspective. Because that's where my question would be, well, why is that? What's the competition? And we could probably sit here like three white males and pontificate about it to much of the chagrin of any female listening to all of our deductions and reasonings about it. But it's another interesting thing, like that whole thing you hear about female friends with each other not always being as good or the same.
Yeah.
But you made a great point, Clark. I mean, you are fortunate. I think each of us are fortunate to have people that we consider close enough that we can call upon in that way and that we can entrust in that way. It's to your friend's father's comment, or, I don't know if the background, as you said, but, it's fairly common where a lot of people never were able to, or maybe did at some point, and that isn't there. And you're at a certain stage of your life where it's hard to create that again. We're fortunate to have people in our lives that we can call upon in that way.
I've always, I even look at my parents as examples, right? Like when I think a lot of things, I look at my parents for examples of, like, how they're physically looking after themselves, what sort of friendships have they cultivated and kept over the years. And I do find myself comparing a bit to them. And, I think my dad's got some close friends, but I don't know that they talk very often. But I've always taken pride in cultivating friendships and keeping connections like us. I mean, geez, it's 3 years ago, almost exactly, that I left. I think it might even be exactly 3 years to the day. The June 30 I think that was my last day.
Oh, wow.
I think that's when we flew out. Maybe it was July 2nd or 3rd. But anyway, it's been almost exactly 3 years. And here we are connecting through this way. And I think it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I do wonder, like, I haven't asked yet, but what if I ever come over there to visit, if there's a couch or a spare bedroom with my name on it.
You got
I
it.
live a bit far away, but I mean, you and the whole family more than welcome.
You're
thank
welcome.
you.
I don't really like your family.
Yeah, I didn't expect the door to be open for the three others in my circle, in my family.
I'm just kidding.
But yeah, I don't know. Anything else on this? We were going to do a 30-minute episode, and we're almost there. Anything else that's percolating on this topic before we move on?
I mean,
No,
we could talk about this forever, but let's move on.
This one I got to thinking about, guys. I forget what triggered it, but I think it's what I've seen videos where like a sports player will buy a convertible, like a professional sports player who's successful. You see like TikTok or a YouTube video of a sports star maybe giving their one of their parents a brand new car, and it's a big reveal. And I just got to thinking, if your kid was a famous sports star, you know, talking like multiple $1 million contract, and would you want like him to or her to buy you stuff? Would it depend on the situation? Like, would you expect them to kind of show up and say, "Hey, I'll pay off your mortgage for you, mom and dad"? Like to what degree should a kid do that? Should they do that?
I think that if they're in a position to do it and they want to do it, that's all well within their right. And if they choose to do that and it benefits me or someone else, their mother, doesn't matter. Great. That's something they want to do. They want to express in that way, or they want to show appreciation, or they want to, you know, just do it because they can do it. That's completely on, you know, upon them. Is there an expectation that they would do it? No, not at all. And I think if, you know, this is not a like
by you.
My own, by me. No.
Yeah.
There's no expectation from me. But I will say this, like, if they don't do something like that, and I'm not necessarily saying for me, I'm saying for someone in their lives, whether it be a friend or one of their relatives or whatever, if they don't do something like that and they have earned some exorbitant amount of money and they're in this position where they're so far beyond their means and they don't do something like that, well, that's a failure on me as a parent, that I haven't instilled in them some kind of sense of their responsibility beyond themselves. So maybe I'm taking that topic in a different direction, but I think that that's part of the experiences and the lessons that I try to expose them to when they're quite young. So they do understand that, you know, when you do have, or when you are in a position to help others, you should. You know, there is a purpose for you being on this earth beyond just yourself. There's a community around us so we can ensure the support of others when we can do those things. We're not only existing for ourselves. So, you know, maybe I'm taking this, you know, to too much of a existential or broader type of discussion, but that's where my thinking goes when it comes to something like this. I think it's wonderful when someone does something like this for their family members. But to me, I should have zero expectation. I didn't go into becoming a parent or, you know, helping to pursue these things.
Live off the fortunes of your children.
But actually, here, a quick funny aside. My youngest, he expressed to me all these different business ideas that he has. He's 6 years old, and he has all these different business ideas. And one of the ideas that he has is he wants to have a pizza shop. And he also wants to have like a gelato or ice cream shop. But he said not next to each other because that doesn't make any sense. You have to make them really hungry and want it and have separate places because they should be two separate. And basically what he was alluding to was like brands. Like, where is this kid coming from? So he's describing these two businesses, ideas that he has. And I'm like, oh, how are you going to do it? He's like, I'm going to do this and do that. And I said, so, you know, how are you going to build up one or the other? He goes, oh, well, I'm going to start with a food truck for one, and I'm going to create, you know, interest in this one and da-da-da. So he's going through all this. And he goes, and don't worry, Dad. He goes, I'm going to have the pizza shop in a building that has an apartment in it. So that way you can live there and you can make pizzas for me. So he got his labor part done.
Nice. Oh, so that you can make pizzas or that you can eat the pizzas.
Either way.
Okay. I was going to say he's going to make it convenient to you so you can work there and make the pizza.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, that's, so you did take it in a bit of a different direction, and that's all right.
It's an interesting take.
It is. And I wonder, like, so you looked at it like almost as in to help people, because you could say, well, what if Josh Donaldson's mom doesn't necessarily need a convertible sports car, or to have her mortgage paid off. But is that a factor? Like your parent is financially not doing well and you jump in and, in that situation, I think it behooves the kid to make life a little bit easier. But as a parent, would you find that weird, or would you be like, would that be almost, disrespectful to say do something like that?
I don't know about disrespectful. I mean, if you're struggling, if as the parent you're struggling financially and your kid's successful, and they're offering a helping hand because they've become successful, and obviously as a parent you may have played a part in, I assume you've played a part in that success, right? To some extent, right?
Taking them to ball practice.
Yeah, giving
early,
right, giving them
giving up their time.
Opportunity. Yeah, absolutely. And if I were in that kind of a situation, I'd be really happy, and that my child is willing to take care of me like that. I'd be proud.
But do you get it where it could maybe be the parent could be offended in a way? Like, I can handle my own problems.
I think it really depends on the financial situation as well of the parent, right? Like if you're well off already,
Yes.
and like you just have a mortgage, it's like, okay, you could pay for it, but I don't really need you to do so. I have the mortgage is kind of I don't want to say by choice, but I chose to live here and I chose this mortgage because this is what I can afford, and I'm very happy to continue paying this. Use your son or daughter, use your money for better things.
Yeah, I mean, the person who's going to get offended, I would say the majority of which who are going to get offended are people who are kind of coming at it from a position of relative privilege, right? They've had a stable job, they've had a stable career, they maybe even had a very stable foundation in childhood themselves, where they would even feel in some way offended by it. The other portion of that would be offended by it would maybe be people who are very prideful, right? Who would be offended in some way because they've busted their butt to be in the position that they're in, and they have no problem doing that because they've gotten themselves into that position to be able to do it. And even if they are struggling, it's still to them on them. But I would say in large part to Sileem's kind of comment there, if they're already pretty well off, it would make some logical sense that the person would be bothered by it. But I think most people would be quite appreciative, because the reality is a lot of times, the goal is for your children to be better off than you were, right? And that includes financially. So if that's the case and your children are better off than you financially, and they decide to do that with their income, that's up to them.
All right. Yeah.
Actually, I mean, as we were talking about this, I was thinking about a interesting relationship between a father and son, in which the son is like incredibly wealthy, and that's Floyd Mayweather, the boxer. And his relationship with his father is really tumultuous. I haven't followed Floyd Mayweather in a really long time, but obviously they didn't come from any money, right? And Floyd Mayweather became the wealthiest boxer and maybe to some extent athlete in the world, and has always had this sort of weird, difficult relationship with his father to this day, right? And a lot of that revolves around the money element as well.
Oh, I see. So they're actually, some of the problems are related to son who's made multiple millions of dollars. And
yeah, I mean, we're skipping over a lot of other
There's a
issues,
lot.
like drug
There's a
abuse.
lot of
There was a
it. Yeah,
massive
yeah.
drug abuse issue there that's
Yeah.
under all of this. But yeah.
Well, and you've heard of TV stars that where the parents took the money that the kid made. Different topic maybe, but certain, like I think the guy that was from the show Different Strokes, Gary Coleman. I think he was on on that show as child star from a very young age, like 6 or 7 or something, and at the time it was where he could start taking the money and doing something with it. He realized there wasn't any there because the parents had squandered it all.
Yeah,
So,
or Drew Barrymore, right? Drew Barrymore had to emancipate herself from her parents as well, because, I mean, her mom was just pumping her for money, and she was having her go to the most inappropriate events and things at such a young age. She was in Studio 54 when she was like 10, 11, 12, 13 years old. I mean, that's why she got addicted to drugs when she was pretty young. I mean, she very recently even commented about the fact that, when my mom passes away, I don't care. Like, it's finally that person out of my life completely.
yeah.
So, taken in the other direction, it can be quite detrimental.
So we'll just do it quickly around the horn. I know, Sileem, you don't have kids at the moment, but if you did have a kid who became a star of the New York Yankees and signed a $200 million contract, and would you be expecting any of the proceeds to make it your way?
No. Not at all.
Justin?
No.
Yeah, and I'd agree. I wouldn't expect it at all, and I think if it happened, great. Otherwise, it's their success. I don't expect anything in return. All right. Well, let's hit our what we're watching, listening to, reading. Any of those 3 are up for grabs. Sileem, what's in your what's on your plate these days from a reading, watching, listening to perspective?
So I am currently watching. I'm midway through this really short sort of spy thriller drama. It's on Amazon Prime. It's called Citadel, and it's 6 episodes. I just finished watching episode 3. It's really good. It's like it's exactly what you kind of want out of like a spy series, right? And it's got the action. It's got a little bit of a sci-fi element to it, and but the best part is that it stars Priyanka Chopra, which was just
a nice bonus.
Oh yeah, total bonus, right?
I was going to say, well, Stanley Tucci's in it. I like him.
Stanley Tucci is in it as well, yeah. And Stanley Tucci kind of has like a nice, funny character in that as well. So there's an element of comedy. It's not like all super serious. Yeah, it's nice. I like that it's short as well. I don't know if there's going to be like a season 2 or how it's going to end, but so far I'm really liking it, and I would recommend it.
I know the guy. The Richard Madden is the star of the show. It looks like, and I remember watching him in this mini series. I think it was thriller series Bodyguard.
That was good.
And yeah, he was pretty good in that. Or that was a pretty good show. So it looks like he was in Game of Thrones as well.
Right. The dude's good. I didn't know him I didn't know his sort of acting background, or I don't recall. I think I've seen him somewhere, but Priyanka,
she's all that.
Yeah, she's all that.
All right. So that's Citadel currently on Amazon Prime. Justin, what are you watching, reading, listening to these days?
Oh, as I'm sure you heard a couple weeks ago, the writer Cormac McCarthy passed away. So I'd never read any of his books and always appreciated his work in other formats. You may know his books from the movie adaptations, The Road, All the Pretty Horses, No Country for Old Men, especially No Country for Old Men. There's that one.
The Road I've heard about. I've heard the book is absolutely just like really dark.
Right. So I went back to revisit some of his work, and having never read any of them, I went back and read The Road. so, 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 I was reading it and, was running out of time on my library checkout. So I switched to the audiobook version, and my goodness, I got to keep myself from driving into a pillar. It's just, it's devastating. It is not, it is not audiobook while driving material.
Cause it's kind of it's an apocalyptic scenario, right? Like,
yes, it's an apocalyptic scenario.
Survival.
It is. And it was, the movie adaptation was with the actor Viggo Mortensen, which I'm likely
which is a
him.
favorite of his, right? He was in No Country for Old Men, wasn't he?
No, he wasn't in No Country for Old Men, but he was in another film, with, what's that very dark director's name? Well, he's been in Eastern Promises, and there was this other movie.
Eastern Promises. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, and there was this other one that he was in where he was basically an amnesiac who used to be a hitman. It's him, and Maria Bello plays his wife, and on that same Priyanka Chopra type of tip, Maria Bello at peak Maria Bello time. So if you ever get a chance, check out the Viggo Mortensen Maria Bello film where he plays a former hitman who is now a farmer in the Midwest, and he doesn't remember any of it. It's very well done. So yeah, look for that one. But what I've been reading, or what I've been audiobooking for the last half of it, was The Road by Cormac McCarthy.
Okay.
How about yourself, Clark?
Well, I had a couple. I mean, I got into Ted Lasso, which I'd been hearing everybody talk about for the last 2 to 3 years now. And we're in season 2 of that. I think I might have mentioned that on a previous episode. So I won't get into that other than to say I'm enjoying it. I watched a documentary, last week with my son. I had watched it before, The Battered Bastards of Baseball. It's on Netflix, I believe, and it's a story of Portland had a AAA baseball team in the early 70s that left town and went somewhere else. And the Kurt Russell's dad, who was an actor of his own right, I think did a lot of westerns. He brought a baseball team to the city of Portland once this other team left, and it's a profile of that experience of how the people of Portland totally adopted this ragtag bunch of players that were basically rejects from everywhere else, and were almost given this second chance. And if you see it, you'll see like the tryouts, and of course back then everything was kind of like that. It was just the athletes of baseball players in the 70s compared to now, totally different body types. And these guys were they literally looked like people that would be on my beer league softball team on Sundays. So it's pretty cool. I didn't realize Kurt Russell was actually a really good baseball player, and he played on the team. And, so I'm a huge baseball fan, and I always like these, how does a team, almost a Ted Lasso kind of story of a team that's struggling and we want to have the respect of it. They have a huge passion of fans that follow. And so, The Battered Bastards of Baseball.
Nice. Sounds interesting.
Well, guys, that's it for this episode. It's been a while, but I suspect we're going to get an opportunity to record again much sooner. And we want to wish you guys a good rest of your Friday.
Thank you, Clark. Good to
You too,
be
Clark.
back on the show.